Hello, my name is Dr. Jackalyn Rainosek, and I'm with DTP-Leadership Group. And this is Hot Topic Bold Talk. I want to talk about when silence becomes permission. Again, I want to repeat it. When silence becomes permission, that power, intimidation, and the choice facing America today is based on when we become silent and we give permission to what is happening in our country. There are moments in our nation's life when the most dangerous mistake is believing nothing fundamentally has changed. When the ritual of democracy still exists, elections are held, hearings are convened, judges issue rulings. But the meaning behind those rituals has quietly shifted in our country today. These are the moments when democracy does not collapse in a single dramatic event, but erodes steadily, legally, and often with consent of those who tell themselves they are simply being practical. I'll just ignore it. America is living through such a time. What we are witnessing is not disorder. It is not confusion. It is not merely polarization or a political hardball. It is the normalization of intimidation as a governing tool, the substitution of loyalty for law, and the slow transformation of our democratic institutions into mechanisms that protect power rather than restrain it. The signs are everywhere. They are visible in Congress, they're in the courts, they're in the federal law enforcement, they're in the Justice Department, and they're in American cities. They are visible not only in what leaders do, but in what they refuse to do. When silence becomes permission, what responsibility is the rest of us to carry? What are we responsible for? History makes one thing clear. Democracies do not fail because many people oppose them. They fail because too many people decided to wait and see whether they wanted to take action or not. We cannot afford that anymore. The comfort of believing institutions will save us is a myth. Americans are raised on a powerful civic myth that our institutions are self-correcting, that the Constitution enforces itself, that checks and balances operate automatically, that the norms once established will hold simply because they always have. It's not now. It's happening every day. That none of that is happening. This belief is comforting to many people. It allows people to remain calm even as warning signs accumulate. It allows citizens to outsource responsibility to systems rather than people. It allows the idea that someone somewhere will step in when things go too far. But institutions do not defend themselves. People defend them. And when those people hesitate, when they calculate the political cause, fear retaliation, or convince themselves that now is not the right moment to confront something, the system does not break dramatically. It bends, and it's constantly bending every day. Then it bends again, and eventually it stays bent. And that's not what I want for America. I don't know about you. That bending is now visible in the very branches of government designed to restrain executive power. Which branch of government? We do not have to ask, since we all know it is the Republican-controlled Congress of the United States that is bent. constantly. Our three branches of government are no longer balanced. Now, Congress and the performance of powerlessness have had a major impact. In my previous podcast, I said that the Congress was putting forth a bill to restrict what Trump was doing in Venezuela. Unfortunately, in January of this year, the United States Senate confronted a question that should have been routine in a functioning democracy. Does Congress still intend to exercise its constitutional authority over war? A bipartisan resolution would have required President Donald Trump to seek congressional authorization before expanding U.S. military action related to Venezuela. It did not demand an end to hostilities. It did not block the president's outright. It simply affirmed Article 1 of the Constitution, the idea that the power to declare war does not belong solely with the executive. 5 Republican senators initially supported the measure. That support evaporated almost immediately. President Trump responds with his usual things. It's not argument, it's not evidence, and it's not constitutional reasoning. It's called intimidation. He publicly attacks the senators. He calls them stupid and threatens their political future. Republican leaders did not defend Congress's institutional authority. They did not rally around the Constitution. Instead, they mobilized to protect the president from embarrassment. Phone calls were made, pressure was applied, assurances were offered, private promises in place of public law happened. Within days, Senators Josh Haley and Todd Young reversed themselves. Republican leaders used a procedural maneuver to kill the resolution. Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. The resolution died, not because Congress lacked authority, but because too many members lacked courage. This was not a policy defeat, it was a character test, and Congress failed. When lawmakers choose fear over constitutional duty, they are not merely avoiding conflict, they are teaching future presidents exactly how to intimidate others. Cowardly behavior is something I find extremely difficult to see, and it's become a part of our system. It is tempting to frame moments like this as individual failures. The senator lacked backbone. That leader caved under pressure, but that framing is no longer sufficient. What we are witnessing is not sporadic cowardice. It is a structural way to create cowards. Republican lawmakers now operate in an environment where dissent is punished quickly and publicly, while compliance is rewarded quietly and consistently. Primary threats loom, donor pressure intensifies, social media outrage is weaponized, party leaders enforces discipline, not in service of institutions, but in service of one man, Donald Trump. This is why objectives surface only after votes are cast, why regret appears op-eds rather than roll calls, why concerns are expressed once retirement is announced. So let's go to Senator Tom Tillis. Dissent without consequences is what we're seeing here. Now, it's not that I don't support him, because I like what he's saying, but he tends to be inconsistent. In recent months, Senator Tillis of North Carolina said many things that I truly believe are the reality in America. He has criticized Trump's advisors. He's mocked talk of invading Greenland. He's defended the independence of the Federal Reserve. He has condemned the pardoning of January 6 rioters and rejected the attempt to turn violence into a normal thing that happens every day. His comment, "I'm sick of stupid," Tillis declared on the Senate floor. Many Americans, like me, and I hope many of you, see these statements as reality, the truth. It names something that's real. It names the exhaustion with the reckless masquerading of strength, rather the chaos masquerading as leadership. And that's what this is. But there is a fact that we cannot ignore. Tom Tillis is retiring. And that fact reveals the central dilemma of Republican dissent today. Tillis can speak now because the consequences no longer apply. His political future is no longer hostile to Trump's approval. But see, we can help all our senators. Republican, doesn't matter which parties. We can support those and say, we'll vote for you if you will stop allowing Trump to dominate our country. Tillis' own history underscores a certain reality. In 2019, Tillis warned accurately that Trump's declaration of a national emergency to fund the border wall would weaken Congress and set a dangerous precedent. He wrote eloquently about executive overreach in 2019. Then he reversed course and voted for the wall. This is not about personal hypocrisy. It's about political survival. Dissent that arrives only when power is secure or when power has been relinquished does not step and simply erode democratic processes. It simply does not stop democratic erosion. It merely narrates the facts. But see, we have to hear the facts and we have to support people. We have to start calling them and saying, if you will stop allowing this, I will support you. Democracy does not survive on retrospective honesty. It survives on timely resistance. And definitely there is resistance every day. Now let me go to the judiciary, though, and the quiet normalization of power. For many Americans, the courts represented the final refuge of faith. Even as Congress bends and executive overreach, there is comfort in believing that judges, insulated from politics, will restrain excess. That belief is becoming increasingly fragile. A comprehensive analysis of the federal appellate court rulings in 2025 revealed that judges appointed by Donald Trump during his first term voted in favor of his second term agenda 133 times and against it only 12 times. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. These judges sit on the most powerful tier of the judiciary, the Court of Appeals. They decide in these courts and in district court rulings whether district court rulings stand or fail. So they decide, these courts of appeals decide whether district court rulings stand or fail. They issue administrative stays that quietly reinstate blocked policies. They create binding precedents that are long precedents we will have to live with before the Supreme Court ever acts and intervenes. This is how our power consolidates without splendor or an amazing thing happening. We don't see it because we're not paying attention to the courts. That's the reason Richard Wilson and I are talking once a month about our court system. A policy blocked in the morning can be reversed by appeal court in the afternoon. Rights are curtailed, lives are affected, and the public is told, once again, the courts have spoken. Remember, the Republican-appointed Trump judges are voting 133 times for supporting him versus 12 of rejecting things. That is frightening. Trump has been explicit in praising judges who rule in his favor and attacking those who do not, and advances further obedience. Resistance invites retaliation. And we've seen it over and over again. Judicial independence does not disappear overnight. It is being eroded. Let's go to Minnesota. When the federal power meets civil society. If Washington shows how power is normalized, Minnesota shows how it is enforced. The killing of Renee Good, a 37-year-old mother of three, by an ICE officer was the catalyst. The Department of Homeland Security immediately declared the shooting justified. Trump's going to justify anything, so his Justice Department or any of his institutions are going to justify what happened. Look at the video, and you will show that there's clear evidence that contradicts the official narrative. Then comes escalation. Thousands of ICE agents were deployed to the city. Protests erupted. Federal officers clashed with residents. Days later, another person was shot, this time in the leg, during confrontations between agents and protesters. Tear gas, stunt grenades, masked officers, unmarked vehicles. Residents describe a city under siege. Federal agents pepper sprayed people near churches, schools, and public gatherings. Cars were stopped. U.S. citizens were asked for papers. People began carrying passports just to buy groceries. Neighbors organized multiple aid networks and whistle patrols to warn one another when agents arrived. This is not targeted enforcement. It is occupation logic. Minnesota's governor said the federal operation had long ceased to resemble immigration enforcement. He accused ICE of indiscriminate stops, violent tactics, and dragging people into unmarked vehicles without due process. The federal response was revealing. The deputy attorney general labeled the protesters the same usual thing that Trump uses. Insurrection is what was happening with protests. I think it's fascinating. He sees any protests in America as insurrection, yet now he's going to get involved in Iran and help those people that are protesting. That, to me, shows real insanity with the president. When protest becomes insurrection, dissent becomes criminal. When criticism becomes disorder, force becomes justified. Language prepares the ground. Violence follows. And then let's look. When legal professionals leave, what are the messages? Perhaps the most alarming development did not come from the streets, but from inside the Justice Department. Senior prosecutors in Minneapolis resigned rather than comply with pressure to investigate the widow of Renee Good. Career attorneys in the Civil Rights Division left after their office was excluded from the investigation entirely. Nearly half of the division's attorneys departed in 2025 following a dramatic shift in mission away from civil rights enforcement toward ideological targeting. I don't think y'all realize something. He's taking away all the civil rights enforcements as quickly as he can, and he's justifying it by his attack on those of us who are woke, as he talks about it. And what he's using that as a justification to attack Democratic cities and states. It's not about Republican cities and states, it's about Democratic cities and states. This is not the America that I chose to live in, and I hope it is not the country you chose to live in. When career prosecutors are trained, they can withstand political pressure. When they leave in mass, it signals that the system itself has been compromised. When professionals walk away, power is no longer constrained by law or ethics. It is constrained only by loyalty. Oversight is being used as retaliation. At the same time, Congress refused to restrain Trump's war powers. It has rediscovered an appetite for oversight aimed selectively. House Oversight Chair James Comer has aggressively pursued Bill and Hillary Clinton over Jeffrey Epstein, threatening contempt of Congress and possible imprisonment if they refuse for closed-door depositions. The Clintons have already provided sworn statements comparable to those Comer accepted from others. They argued that subpoenas lack a valid legislative purpose. I think you need to read their letter. It's outstanding that the Clintons have written. And they're saying, we're going to take a stand. We are not going to put up with this. We see this as illegal actions, and it is very inappropriate. It is an attack, again, on people that Trump does not like. Contrast is impossible to ignore. Trump's documented and tied to Epstein. So what they're doing is trying to get Democratic people that have served in political positions to be the front news so that people will forget that Trump spent an hour and a half with an underage girl. And it's documented. There's no way to ignore it. And there are many things that are a part of Trump's life that were very much a part of his connection with Epstein. The Justice Department's decision to close its Epstein investigation without releasing key information is a problem. Congressional abdication of real oversight, where executive power is concerned, is very difficult. Oversight is not being used to restrain power. It is being used to punish perceived enemies and protect the allies of Trump. That's what this oversight uh, committee is doing. It is not accountability. It is retaliation dressed up as procedure. Let's talk about the Federal Reserve and the price of independence. When the Department of Justice opened a criminal investigation into Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, even Republicans recoiled. Powell called the probe unprecedented and urged Americans to view it in a broader context of political pressure. He stated plainly that the investigation was not about renovation cost for Trump's big new dance floor, but retaliation for refusing to set interest rates according to the president's preference. Nobody should dictate the feds about interest rates. This matters. The independence of the Federal Reserve underpins economic stability. Understand that the independence of the Federal Reserve establishes our economic stability. Markets rely on the belief that monetary policies are guided by data, not by intimidation. And that's what Jerome Powell has done. Republican lawmakers, including Tom Tillis, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and John Kennedy, publicly warned that politicizing the Fed could decentralize markets and raise interest rates. They questioned the credibility of the Justice Department itself. Once again, the pattern is unmistakable. Independent institutions are pressured, critics are investigated, loyalties rewarded. Power no longer requires brute force when fear will suffice. But Powell is not going to be fearful. He just flat does not agree with some of the things that Trump does, and he's going to speak out and stand firm. Rigging the future before the vote. Even elections themselves are shaped before voters ever cast a ballot. Mid-decade redistricting efforts that Trump has put in, like states like Florida that are considering it now, lock in a partisan advantage ahead of the 2026 midterms. We'll see how well these districts really work, because voters have the right to vote for a different party if they don't like what's happening. Unfortunately, special legislative sessions are called, maps are redrawn. Trump pressures lawmakers to do whatever it takes. Control the districts, and you control what's happening in the election. And yet, restraints and resistance persist. In Indiana, voters stopped an extreme gerrymandering. In Missouri, more than 300,000 citizens signed petitions to challenge unfair maps. Local action still matters, so we need to be a part of it. Democracy is wounded, but it is not dead. When silence becomes permission, what really happens? Here's what I think happens. Congress bends, courts normalize power, federal agencies are politicized, law enforcement is militarized, prosecutors resign, maps are manipulated, and still people speak, people organize, people resist, which brings us back to the question that defines this moment for you and me. When silence becomes permission, what are you and I prepared to do? History will not ask whether you were comfortable. It will ask whether you acted. Democracy does not survive because it is inevitable. It survives because people choose it again and again, especially when doing so is costly. The future is not written, but it will belong to those who refuse to be silent. So I am asking you to join me now and take action, protest, resist, do anything you can to support the democratic process we have had in America that is now being eroded. Thank you for listening.